I'm Alexandra, 32 years old, living what I thought was a good life in Seattle. Never imagined my own family would plan a Christmas trip without me until I found the itinerary. The shock when I discovered my sister Amy had specifically requested my exclusion cut deep, especially since she and her husband Derek were living in my house rent-free. So while they enjoyed their holiday getaway, I changed the locks. Now my phone is blowing up with desperate messages from everyone. If you're watching this video, drop a comment letting me know where you're from and hit that subscribe button as I take you through how everything fell apart. I've always been the responsible one in my family. After graduating with honors in finance from University of Washington, I landed a job as a financial analyst at a respected firm in downtown Seattle. I worked 60-hour weeks for years, saved aggressively, and managed to buy my 3-bedroom house when I was 28. Not a mansion by any means, but a comfortable craftsman-style home in a decent neighborhood with a small backyard. I was proud of what I'd accomplished through my own hard work and careful planning. My parents, Margaret and Robert, never failed to tell people about my accomplishments, but there was always something performative about it. Like they were ticking boxes of what parents should say rather than genuinely celebrating my success. They'd quickly pivot to talking about my younger sister Amy, who they described as having such a free spirit and so much personality. Translation: Amy couldn't hold down a job for more than 6 months and made questionable life choices. But she was fun at parties. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. Amy is 3 years younger than me, and growing up, we shared a bedroom until I left for college. She has this infectious laugh and natural charisma that draws people to her. When we were teenagers, she was always the one getting invited to parties while I stayed home studying. Our parents constantly reminded me to loosen up like your sister, even as they relied on me to be the responsible one who never caused trouble. Amy married Derek right after their whirlwind 6-month romance when she was 26. Derek works in sales, or at least he did until his company downsized last year. He's tall, conventionally handsome, and can charm anyone for about 15 minutes before you start noticing how every story he tells somehow makes him the hero. He's the type who always has a business venture that's about to take off, requiring just a small investment from friends and family. Our extended family includes our Aunt Linda, who lives an hour away and has always been more perceptive about family dynamics than my parents. My cousin Jessica has stayed close with me over the years, often confiding that she admired how I handled family pressure. My grandparents passed away several years ago, but they had been the ones who encouraged my academic pursuits and financial independence. The housing situation with Amy and Derek began 6 months ago. They showed up at my door one rainy April evening, Amy's eyes red from crying. Their landlord had evicted them after 3 months of missed rent. Derek had lost his job. Amy's part-time retail position wasn't covering their expenses, and they had maxed out their credit cards. It would just be for a couple months until we get back on our feet, Amy pleaded. Standing in my entryway, her mascara smudged. We don't have anywhere else to go. Derek added, your place has that spare bedroom you never use anyway. We'd barely be in your way. I hesitated. My house wasn't huge, and I valued my privacy and routine. But they were family, and despite our differences, I couldn't imagine turning Amy away when she was clearly desperate. Okay. I agreed reluctantly. But we need some ground rules. We sat at my kitchen table, and I outlined my expectations. They would keep the common areas clean, respect quiet hours during workdays, contribute to utilities, and actively look for jobs and their own place. They nodded enthusiastically, Amy hugging me tightly and promising they'd be the perfect houseguests. Those promises lasted about 2 weeks. Soon my immaculate kitchen was perpetually cluttered with their unwashed dishes. The living room became Derek's office, with papers spread across my coffee table and his laptop permanently stationed on my couch. Their bedroom door was always closed, with piles of laundry spilling into the hallway. Could you guys please clean up the kitchen? I'd ask, trying to keep my tone neutral. We'll get to it later, Lex, Amy would respond, not looking up from her phone. We're kind of in the middle of something. later never seemed to come. I'd end up cleaning myself just to maintain my sanity. The noise was another issue. Derek would take sales calls on speakerphone, pacing around the house talking loudly about closing deals and maximizing potential. Amy started having friends over for wine nights that stretched well past midnight, their laughter and music penetrating my bedroom walls as I tried to sleep before early morning meetings. When I brought up the house rules again, Derek shrugged. "We're family, not tenants. Why are you being so uptight about everything?" Amy added, "You're lucky you have company. You were probably so lonely before we moved in." I wasn't lonely. I had friends, colleagues, and hobbies. I enjoyed my peaceful evenings reading or watching documentaries. But I swallowed my frustration and tried to adapt. The financial aspect was another sore point. Their contribution to utilities was inconsistent at best, non-existent at worst. Amy would tearfully explain they just didn't have it this month, but next month would be different. Meanwhile, I noticed she somehow had money for new clothes and Derek never seemed to miss his weekly poker nights. Holidays had always been important in our family. Growing up, my parents made a big deal of Christmas traditions, from decorating the tree together to making special cookies from my grandmother's recipe. As adults, we'd evolved to planning trips together instead of exchanging gifts. For the past 3 years, I'd organized and partially funded trips to a cabin in Lake Tahoe, a beach house in San Diego, and a ski weekend in Whistler. I enjoyed these gatherings despite the tensions. I'd spend weeks researching accommodations that would please everyone, making reservations at restaurants, and planning activities. Amy would complain if things weren't perfect, but I still treasured the moments when we'd manage to laugh together over a board game or share memories around a fire. This Christmas would be our first holiday season with Amy and Derek living in my house. I assumed we'd plan something together as usual, maybe adjusting to a more budget-friendly option given their financial situation. I started researching possibilities in October, saving links to affordable cabin rentals within driving distance. "We should start figuring out our Christmas plans," I mentioned one evening as the 3 of us ate takeout in the living room. "I found some cute places that still have availability." "Yeah, totally," Amy replied vaguely, exchanging a quick glance with Derek. "But we're not sure what our situation will be by then." "What do you mean?" I asked. "It's only 2 months away." Derek jumped in. "Just a lot of moving parts with job prospects and stuff. Let's talk about it later." That was the first sign something was off, but I didn't think too much of it at the time. Little did I know they were already making very different holiday plans. The first thing I noticed was the sudden silence in our family group chat whenever I brought up Christmas. Normally, my mom would chime in with suggestions or my dad would post links to activities in whatever area we were considering. But when I shared some potential rental options in early November, the response was a deafening digital silence. "These cabins look great. What does everyone think?" I texted, attaching links to 3 possibilities. Hours passed. Then a day. Finally, my mom responded with just a thumbs-up emoji. No comments, no questions, no engagement at all. Later that week during our regular Sunday call with my parents, I tried again. "So, what are we thinking for Christmas?" "Those cabins are booking up fast," I said. "Oh, we haven't really had time to look at those links yet, honey," my mom replied, her voice higher pitched than normal. "Your father and I have been so busy with the church fundraiser." "That's fine, but we should decide soon," I pressed. "Maybe we could do a family Zoom call this week to figure it out?" "Let's not rush into anything," my dad interjected. "We'll sort it out." The conversation quickly shifted to my cousin's new baby and my mom's garden club drama. Every attempt I made to circle back to holiday plans was smoothly deflected. Meanwhile, at home, Amy was taking phone calls in her bedroom with the door closed. I'd catch snippets as I passed by. "No, she doesn't know yet." Or, "We need to figure out how to handle it." One evening, I noticed Derek scrolling through winter clothing options online, adding heavy sweaters and snow boots to a shopping cart. "Planning a ski trip?" I asked casually. He quickly minimized the browser window. Just browsing. Black Friday sales and all that. Amy started packing clothing items in small batches, tucking them away in the back of the closet in their room. I noticed because I went in to drop off their clean laundry one day and saw a partially filled suitcase hastily covered with a blanket. When I directly asked Amy about Christmas, her responses became increasingly bizarre. Are we doing gifts this year or planning a trip like usual? I asked one morning as we both prepared for work. I don't know if I can afford much this year, she said, not meeting my eyes. Maybe we should just keep it low-key. That's fine, but we should still coordinate with Mom and Dad, right? They keep avoiding the subject. They're probably just busy, Amy said, suddenly very interested in organizing her purse. Not everything needs to be planned months in advance, Alexandra. Sometimes spontaneous is better. The Amy I knew had never been interested in spontaneous Christmas. She was usually the one demanding to know exact details so she could pack the right outfits. My suspicions grew when I called my mom one evening and heard her talking to someone before she picked up. Don't mention the cabin. I distinctly heard her say before answering with an overly bright, "Hi, sweetheart." That weekend, I decided to confront Amy directly. I found her alone in the kitchen making coffee. Amy, what's going on with Christmas plans? Everyone's acting weird when I bring it up. She nearly spilled her coffee. Nothing's going on. Why are you being paranoid? I'm not paranoid. Dad literally changed the subject 3 times when I mentioned it yesterday. And why are you packing winter clothes in a suitcase? Amy's face flushed. You were snooping in our room? I was putting away your laundry and saw it. Are you and Derek planning a trip without telling me? She sighed dramatically. Fine. We're planning something special this year, okay? But it's not all figured out yet. Something special that includes Mom and Dad, but not me? In my own house where you're living rent-free. It's not like that, she protested weakly. Maybe you'd enjoy doing your own thing this year. You're always complaining about how stressful holiday planning is. I stared at her speechless. Yes. I'd occasionally mentioned the stress of organizing everything, but that didn't mean I wanted to be excluded entirely. So there's a plan, and I'm not part of it, I said flatly. You're making this a bigger deal than it is, Amy replied, grabbing her coffee and retreating to her bedroom. The final confirmation came a few days later. I was working from home and needed to print some documents. Our shared printer was in the guest room that had become Amy and Derek's bedroom. They were both out, so I went in to use it. That's when I saw the papers in the printer tray. An itinerary for a 7-day stay at a luxury cabin in Breckenridge, Colorado. 6 tickets for a Christmas Eve dinner show. Confirmation of a rental car large enough for 6 people. The reservation was under my father's name, but the booking email listed Amy's address. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. With shaking hands, I took photos of the documents with my phone, then left everything as I'd found it. Back in my home office, I searched my dad's email address and Breckenridge in my inbox, wondering if I'd somehow missed an invitation. Nothing. I checked my spam folder. Nothing. I called my cousin Jessica. Have you heard anything about a family Christmas trip to Colorado? I asked without preamble. A pause. Aunt Margaret mentioned something about a trip, but I thought you were organizing it like usual. Apparently not. Do you know who's going? Another pause. I think your parents, Amy and Derek, and your Aunt Linda and Uncle Tom. Why? 6 people. Just as the reservations indicated. I thanked Jessica and hung up, my mind racing. My family had planned an elaborate Christmas vacation without me. In fact, they had actively hidden it from me. And based on the printer evidence, Amy had been the one to initiate it. The betrayal cut deep. I'd opened my home to my sister and her husband when they had nowhere else to go. I'd tolerated their mess, their noise, their failure to contribute financially. And all while they were secretly planning to exclude me from our family holiday tradition. I spent the rest of the afternoon in a daze, alternating between hurt, anger, and disbelief. When Amy and Derek returned home that evening, I could barely look at them. I needed irrefutable proof before confronting the entire family. That proof came when I, accidentally, bumped into Amy's phone while she was in the shower, causing it to light up with a notification. A text from our mother. Booked our flights to Denver. Can't wait for our special Christmas. Still not sure how to handle Alexandra, though. Now I had everything I needed for a confrontation. It was time for the truth to come out. I decided to get everything out in the open. I invited my parents over for dinner the following weekend, telling them I wanted to discuss holiday plans. They arrived looking visibly uncomfortable, exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. I had prepared a nice meal, partly because cooking calms my nerves, and partly because I wanted the contrast of a warm, welcoming atmosphere for the confrontation that was to come. We sat around my dining table, the one I had saved for months to buy when I first moved in. "This is delicious, Alexandra," my mom said, clearly trying to maintain normalcy. "You always make the best roast chicken." "Thanks," I replied, taking a sip of my wine. So, I wanted to talk about Christmas. The tension in the room immediately thickened. Amy studied her plate intently while Derek suddenly became fascinated with his water glass. "We should probably figure that out soon," my dad said vaguely. I smiled tightly. "Actually, it seems like it's already been figured out." I pulled out printed copies of the Breckenridge reservations and laid them on the table. "Colorado looks beautiful this time of year." The silence was deafening. My mother's face drained of color, my father cleared his throat repeatedly, and Derek looked toward the exit as if calculating how quickly he could leave. Amy spoke first. "Where did you get those?" "They were in the printer." "The printer in my house," I emphasized. "Were you ever going to tell me about this trip, or was I supposed to come home one day and find you all gone with a note saying, 'Merry Christmas, enjoy being alone'?" "It's not like that," my mother started. "Then what is it like?" I demanded. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my entire family planned a Christmas vacation without me, while two of you are living under my roof." More uncomfortable silence. "Someone better start explaining," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion building inside me. Amy finally looked up. "Fine. I'll tell you the truth. I asked Mom and Dad if we could do something just us this year." "Just us meaning everyone except me," I clarified. "You don't understand what it's like living here," Amy continued, a defensive edge entering her voice. "Everything has to be your way, in your perfect house with your perfect job. Do you know how that makes me feel? Like a complete failure all the time." I stared at her in disbelief. "So your solution was to exclude me from Christmas?" "I just wanted one holiday where I didn't feel judged by you," Amy said. "Where everything wasn't planned down to the minute according to an Alexandra-approved schedule. Where I could just relax with family without you making everyone feel like they need to live up to your standards." "I don't judge you," I protested, though a small part of me wondered if that was entirely true. Had my frustration with their living habits come across as judgment? "You do," Amy insisted. "The way you look at our room when it's messy, how you correct Derek's table manners, how you always mention your promotion or your investments when Mom asks how you're doing." "That's just talking about my life," I said. Derek jumped in. "You make everything about you." Every family gathering turns into the Alexandra show. The accusation stung because it was so far from how I saw myself. In my mind, I was the one working behind the scenes to make gatherings pleasant for everyone else. I turned to my parents. "And you two went along with this?" My mother looked miserable. "We didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings." "So you decided to hurt mine instead?" "We thought you wouldn't mind as much," my father said, then immediately seemed to regret his words. "Wouldn't mind being excluded from my own family at Christmas?" My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "Based on what?" "You're so independent, honey," my mother said weakly. "Amy and Derek are going through a rough patch and they needed this time away. We thought you'd understand." "Understand being lied to? Having all of you conspire behind my back? How would any of you feel if I did this to you?" No one had an answer for that. "And the cabin rental confirmation came to Amy's email," I continued. "This wasn't just going along with it. You actively planned this without me." Amy had the decency to look somewhat ashamed. "I found the place online. It looked perfect for what we wanted." "Which was a Christmas without me," I finished for her. You could use the time to yourself, my mother suggested, attempting to salvage the situation. You work so hard. Maybe a quiet Christmas would be nice. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were trying to reframe my exclusion as some kind of gift, as if being alone while they all celebrated together was doing me a favor. Get out, I said quietly. What? My father asked. Get out of my house. All of you. I need to think. My parents gathered their things awkwardly, murmuring apologies that sounded hollow. Amy and Derek retreated to their room, clearly planning to wait out my anger. After my parents left, I sat alone at the dining table, surrounded by half-eaten food and the printouts of their secret plans. The pain was physical, a heaviness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I thought back to all the times I had rearranged my schedule to accommodate family gatherings. The vacation days I'd taken to help Amy move between apartments. The money I'd lent my parents when their roof needed repairs, which they had promised to repay but never did. Had I really been making everything about me all these years? Or had I been the family doormat, always expected to give while receiving little in return? That night, I barely slept. I lay awake replaying conversations from years past, wondering if there had been signs I'd missed. Times when my help wasn't appreciated but tolerated. Moments when my presence was an obligation rather than a desire. The next morning, Amy and Derek emerged from their room cautiously. I was already at the kitchen table with my coffee, staring out the window. Are you still mad? Amy asked, hovering in the doorway. I'm not mad. I replied truthfully. I'm hurt. And I'm reevaluating a lot of things. Look, I'm sorry about how it all came out, she said, not quite apologizing for the actual exclusion. But you can see my side, right? I didn't answer directly. When are you leaving for Colorado? December 23rd, she replied. Back on the 30th. I nodded. Good to know. For the next week, an uncomfortable truce settled over the house. Amy and Derek continued their usual habits, seemingly assuming that the storm had passed. My parents called about mundane topics, carefully avoiding any mention of Christmas or the confrontation. They all expected me to get over it, to fall back into the pattern of accommodating everyone else's needs while suppressing my own hurt, to be the bigger person as I had been so many times before. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. I wasn't going to let this go so easily. Not this time. The weekend after the confrontation, I met my friend Isabella for coffee. We'd been close since college, and she was one of the few people who truly understood my family dynamics. They did what? Isabella exclaimed when I told her about the secret trip. That's beyond messed up. Am I overreacting? I asked. Amy says I make everything about me. Maybe she's right. Isabella shook her head firmly. No way. Look, I've known you for over a decade. You're the most considerate person I know. You're always thinking about everyone else's needs. Then why would they do this? Because they take you for granted, Isabella said bluntly. They know you'll always be there, always forgive, always keep the peace. It's comfortable for them. Her words resonated with something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. So what do I do now? I asked. What do you want to do? I thought for a moment. I want them to understand how it feels. I want them to face consequences for once. Then that's what needs to happen, Isabella said. What are you thinking? I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But I know I can't just let this slide like every other time. The following Tuesday, I had my regular therapy session with Dr. Carter. I'd been seeing her for about a year, initially for work-related stress, but our sessions often circled back to family issues. It sounds like this Christmas situation has brought up some long-standing patterns, Dr. Carter observed after I recounted recent events. Patterns of me being taken for granted, I agreed. And how have you typically responded to these situations in the past? I sighed. I get upset, maybe say something in the moment, but then I let it go. Keep the peace. And has that strategy changed the pattern? No, I admitted. If anything, it's gotten worse. What would breaking the pattern look like? She asked. That question stayed with me for days. What would it mean to truly break this family pattern? Not just express momentary displeasure, but to fundamentally change how I allowed myself to be treated? I started journaling, something Dr. Carter had recommended months ago, but I'd never fully committed to. I wrote pages about my feelings, memories of similar situations in the past, and possible ways forward. One entry stood out to me as particularly clarifying. I keep hoping they'll see how their actions hurt me without me having to show them. But they never do. Words haven't worked. Maybe actions will. This isn't about revenge. It's about self-respect and setting boundaries that actually mean something. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that Amy and Derek's living situation was at the heart of the imbalance. They had been taking advantage of my generosity while simultaneously resenting me for it. It was an unhealthy dynamic for all of us. I began researching tenant laws in Washington state, though we had no formal rental agreement. They had established residency by living in my home for 6 months. I couldn't legally change the locks without notice, but I could give them formal written notice to vacate. The timing of their Christmas trip presented an opportunity. They would be gone for 7 days, which wouldn't be enough time to establish legal abandonment of the property. But it would give me space to implement changes without immediate confrontation. I considered my options carefully. I didn't want to put their belongings on the street or do anything vindictive. That wasn't who I was. But I did need to reclaim my home and my boundaries in a way they couldn't ignore. I created a detailed plan. 1. Write a formal letter giving them 30 days' notice to find new housing. 2. Pack their belongings carefully while they're away. 3. Store everything safely in the garage. 4. Change the locks. 5. Arrange for mail forwarding. 6. Be prepared with references to local housing resources. I knew this plan would cause significant disruption in their lives. They would be angry, hurt, and possibly scramble to find accommodation. My parents would likely be upset with me as well. Was I prepared for the fallout? The question caused me several sleepless nights. I played out various scenarios in my mind, imagining their reactions and potential consequences for our relationships. There was a very real possibility that this action would create a permanent rift in the family. On the other hand, continuing as we had been wasn't sustainable either. My resentment was growing daily. And living with people who had so blatantly excluded me was damaging my mental health. I called Isabella again, needing to voice my concerns. I'm thinking of giving Amy and Derek notice while they're on the trip, I explained. Change the locks, move their stuff to the garage. Leave a letter explaining they have 30 days to find a new place. Wow, Isabella said. That's a big step. Are you sure? That's what I'm struggling with, I admitted. Part of me thinks it's too harsh. But another part feels like anything less won't actually change anything. What's your biggest fear about doing this? She asked. That my family will see me as the villain. That I'll damage relationships beyond repair. And what's your fear about not doing it? I paused, considering. That nothing will change. That I'll keep swallowing my feelings to keep the peace, and they'll keep taking advantage of that. It sounds like you need to decide which fear you can live with, Isabella said gently. After our call, I sat on my back porch watching the December rain. The Christmas lights from my neighbor's house reflected in the puddles forming on my patio. Everyone around me was preparing for holiday joy while I was contemplating upending my family dynamics. But the more I reflected, the more certain I became. This wasn't just about Christmas. It was about years of putting everyone else's needs before my own. Of being the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who would always understand and forgive. I made my decision. I would reclaim my house and my boundaries. It wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. The execution required careful planning. I took a day off work the Monday after Amy and Derek left for Colorado. I purchased new locks and arranged for installation. I bought sturdy moving boxes and packing materials. I drafted a clear, firm letter explaining my decision and providing resources for housing options within their budget. My hands shook as I prepared everything, doubt occasionally creeping in. Was I being too drastic? Too harsh? But then I would remember finding those travel documents, the casual way they had dismissed my feelings, the entitlement with which they had treated my home. No, this wasn't too harsh. This was long overdue. Friday, December 23rd arrived. I helped Amy and Derek load their luggage into their car, wishing them a safe trip with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. If they noticed my unusual quietness, they didn't mention it. As their car disappeared down the street, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolution. The next steps wouldn't be easy, but they were necessary. Good luck in Colorado, I whispered to the empty street. Everything will be different when you return. The locksmith arrived at 9 o'clock Monday morning. I had spent the weekend packing Amy and Derek's belongings methodically, carefully wrapping fragile items and labeling each box with its contents. I had been surprised by how much they had accumulated in just 6 months, their possessions having gradually spread throughout my house like an invasive plant. All done, the locksmith said, handing me 3 new keys. No one's getting in without these or breaking a window. I thanked him and paid, then stood in my newly secured doorway. The house already felt different, like it was mine again in a way it hadn't been for months. I finished moving the last of the boxes to the garage, which I had reorganized to make space. Everything was neatly stacked and protected from potential moisture. Their mail was in a separate box, with a change of address form filled out, ready for their signature. The letter I'd written was placed in a waterproof envelope and taped to the garage door, where they would see it immediately upon return. It was firm but not cruel, explaining my decision and the 30-day timeline for them to find new housing. I had included printouts of affordable apartment listings and contact information for rental assistance programs. With everything in place, I took a deep breath and blocked both Amy and Derek's numbers on my phone. I knew the confrontation was inevitable, but I wanted it on my terms, not in a barrage of angry calls and texts while they were still in Colorado. I informed my neighbors about the situation, partly so they wouldn't be alarmed by any potential drama, and partly as a safety precaution. I didn't think Amy or Derek would become violent, but people can react unpredictably when cornered. The next few days passed in strange tranquility. I reclaimed my space, deep cleaning areas that had been neglected under their occupation. I rearranged furniture, played music loudly for the first time in months, and slept better than I had since they moved in. My parents called several times, leaving increasingly concerned voicemails as I didn't pick up. Alexandra, please call us back. We're worried about you spending Christmas alone. Honey, at least text us to let us know you're okay. Alexandra, this silent treatment isn't solving anything. I listened to each message but didn't respond. I wasn't ready to engage with them yet, knowing they would pressure me to reconsider once they learned what I had done. The calm before the storm ended on December 30th, the day of their scheduled return. I received a text from an unknown number around 8 p.m. Flight landed. Be home in about an hour. I assumed Amy was using Derek's phone since I had blocked hers. I didn't respond. At 9:15, my doorbell rang. Then again. Then continuous pressing, the chime echoing through the house. I steeled myself and went to the front window, pulling back the curtain slightly. Amy and Derek stood on my porch, luggage at their feet, confusion and anger on their faces. Amy spotted me through the window and gestured frantically for me to open the door. I opened the window instead. Your things are in the garage. The letter explains everything. What the hell? Alexandra, Derek shouted. Let us in right now. The garage code is still the same, I said calmly. Everything you own is there, packed safely. You can't do this. Amy cried, her voice rising hysterically. This is illegal. We live here. Read the letter, I repeated, then closed the window and drew the curtains. Their pounding on the door continued for several minutes before I heard them moving around to the side of the house toward the garage. There was blessed silence for about 10 minutes, presumably as they read the letter. Then the doorbell resumed its frantic ringing. Alexandra, please. Amy's voice was tearful now. It's freezing out here. Where are we supposed to go tonight? I had anticipated this question and included a list of reasonably priced hotels in the letter. I didn't respond. My phone began ringing with calls from my parents. I silenced it. Then text messages started flooding in. Dad, Amy just called us crying. What's going on? Mom, Alexandra, answer your phone immediately. This is completely unacceptable behavior. Dad, we're driving over there now. Great. Exactly what I needed. I took a deep breath and prepared for the next wave of confrontation. 20 minutes later, my parents' car pulled up behind Amy and Derek, who were sitting dejectedly on their luggage in the driveway. The four of them had a brief conversation, with much gesturing toward my house, before my father approached the door and knocked firmly. I opened the window again. Hi, Dad. Alexandra, open this door right now, he demanded, his face flushed with anger. We need to talk about this like adults. I've already communicated everything in the letter, I replied. I'm giving them 30 days to find a new place, which is more than legally required. Their belongings are safe and organized. You can't just throw family out on the street, my mother cried, joining my father at the door. I haven't thrown anyone on the street, I corrected. I've given them notice and resources for finding new housing. They chose to exclude me from a family holiday while living in my home. Actions have consequences. This is about that stupid trip? Derek interjected, storming up to the door. You're this petty over a vacation. It's not about the trip, I said, though of course it partly was. It's about respect, boundaries, and the way I've been treated by all of you. The trip was just the final straw. We can talk about this, my mother pleaded. Just let us in and we'll work it out. No, I said firmly. I'm done talking without action. I've asked for respect and consideration many times and nothing changed. Now I'm setting a boundary that can't be ignored. You're being ridiculous, Amy spat. You always have to be so dramatic. Where are they supposed to stay tonight? My father demanded. That's not my problem anymore, I replied, surprised by my own resolve. They've had 6 months of free housing. They can figure out one night. The arguments continued for nearly an hour, cycling through guilt, anger, minimizing, and bargaining. My parents offered to pay for a hotel for Amy and Derek while things cooled down. Derek threatened legal action. Amy vacillated between tearful pleas and furious accusations. Through it all, I maintained my position. No, they couldn't come back into my house. Yes, I was serious about the 30-day timeline. No, I wasn't being unreasonable given their behavior. Eventually, exhaustion seemed to set in. My mother's shoulders slumped in defeat. Fine, she said. They can stay with us tonight. But this conversation isn't over, Alexandra. I know it isn't, I agreed. But it will continue with my boundaries intact. They gathered Amy and Derek's luggage and drove away, all four of them shooting me looks ranging from disappointment to outright hostility. As their taillights disappeared, I felt a curious mixture of guilt and liberation. The next day brought a new wave of messages, not just from my immediate family, but from extended relatives who had been pulled into the drama. Aunt Linda, your mother is beside herself. I know Amy can be difficult, but this seems extreme. Cousin Jessica, I get why you're upset about the trip, but changing the locks? Really? Uncle Tom, family disagreements should be handled privately. Your parents are embarrassed. I didn't respond to any of them. Let them think what they wanted. For once, I was prioritizing my own well-being over family perception. Derek sent an email with the subject line legal notice, claiming tenant rights and threatening to sue for illegal eviction. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend who confirmed my 30-day notice was legally sufficient given the circumstances. I responded with a single line, the 30-day timeline stands. Any further communication should be in writing regarding the logistics of retrieving your belongings. Amy tried a different approach, sending a long, emotionally manipulative message about how I was destroying our sisterly bond over one mistake and how she had always looked up to me. This was harder to ignore, touching on our complicated history and genuine moments of connection we'd shared. But I reminded myself of the pattern we were trapped in and held firm. The intensity of their reactions only confirmed what I had suspected. They had never expected me to establish real consequences. They had assumed I would continue to accommodate, forgive, and enable as I always had. For the first time in our relationship, I had changed the rules, and none of them knew quite how to handle it. The first week of January was eerily quiet. After the initial flurry of angry messages and calls, communication from my family slowed to occasional texts from my mother asking if I had calmed down yet. I hadn't responded to any of them, needing space to process everything that had happened. Amy and Derek had retrieved most of their belongings from my garage under my supervision one tense afternoon. They had loaded everything into a rented moving truck with minimal conversation, Amy shooting me hurt looks while Derek maintained a stony silence. "Where are you staying?" I had asked as they prepared to leave. "With your parents," Amy replied bitterly. "In the guest room that's half the size of what we had here." I felt a twinge of guilt, quickly followed by irritation. "You'll figure it out." "You always do." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" she snapped. "Just an observation," I said. "Good luck with the apartment hunting." According to my mother's reluctant updates, Amy and Derek were looking at options, but finding it challenging to secure an apartment on short notice with their limited income and poor credit history. Part of me wondered if they were really trying or just assuming they could wait me out. Meanwhile, my absence from family gatherings became an uncomfortable void they couldn't ignore. My mother called to inform me about my cousin's baby shower. "Everyone's asking where you are," she said, a note of accusation in her voice. "What did you tell them?" I asked. "That you needed some personal time," she replied. "I didn't want to air our dirty laundry." "I appreciate that," I said, surprising both of us with the civil exchange. Small cracks were beginning to appear in the united front against me. My cousin Jessica called one evening, her tone conspiratorial. "I wanted you to know, I don't think you were wrong," she said. "Amy's been complaining nonstop at family dinners, but Uncle Tom finally told her maybe she should have been more appreciative of your help in the first place." "Really?" I hadn't expected support from my traditionally family harmony-focused uncle. "Really. And between us, Aunt Linda told me she always thought it was strange how Amy and Derek lived with you rent-free, but still had money for new clothes and restaurants." These reports gave me a strange comfort. Perhaps others had seen the imbalance too, even if they hadn't spoken up before. The family narrative about what had happened was slowly shifting. Initially, I was portrayed as the villain who had cruelly evicted family members out of pettiness over a Christmas trip. But as weeks passed and Amy and Derek continued living with my parents, demonstrating the same entitlement and lack of contribution they'd shown with me, perspectives began to change. My mother called me 3 weeks after the lockout, her voice lacking the accusatory tone of previous conversations. "I owe you an apology," she said, catching me completely off guard. "I didn't understand why you reacted so strongly. But I'm starting to see things differently." "What changed?" I asked. "Living with Amy and Derek," she admitted. "They've been here less than a month, and your father and I are at our wits' end. The mess, the noise, the constant excuses about job hunting and apartment searching." I felt a rush of vindication. That's what I dealt with for 6 months. "I know that now," she sighed. "And I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. I'm also sorry about the Christmas trip. It was wrong to exclude you, especially after everything you've done for Amy." It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of the deeper family patterns, but it was a start. The fact that my mother had initiated the apology rather than me seeking it out represented a significant shift in our dynamic. 2 days later, my father called. His apology was more restrained, but still meaningful. "I've always tried to keep the peace," he said. "Sometimes that meant letting things slide that shouldn't have. I should have stepped in when Amy suggested excluding you from the trip." "Why didn't you?" I asked, genuinely curious about his perspective. He was quiet for a moment. "The path of least resistance, I suppose. Amy can be very persistent when she wants something. It seemed easier to go along with it than deal with her reaction if we didn't. And my reaction didn't factor into that calculation?" "We thought you'd be upset, but ultimately understand," he admitted. "You've always been the reasonable one." "Being reasonable doesn't mean being a doormat, Dad." "I see that now," he said. "I'm sorry it took such drastic measures to make us realize it." The most surprising development came a month after the lockout. Amy asked to meet me for coffee alone. I agreed, choosing a neutral cafe halfway between our locations. She looked different somehow, less polished than usual. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "About?" I prompted when she didn't continue. "About why I wanted to exclude you from Christmas," she said. "I told myself it was because you're controlling and judgmental, but that wasn't really it." I waited, letting her work through her thoughts. "The truth is, I was jealous," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You have everything together. Your career, your house, your life. Being around you just reminds me of everything I've screwed up." "Amy." "I don't have everything together," I protested. "Compared to me, you do," she insisted. "And living in your house just made it worse." Every day was a reminder that my little sister was successful enough to own a home while I couldn't even pay rent. Her admission shifted something in my understanding of our relationship. I had seen her actions as entitled and inconsiderate, but hadn't fully grasped the insecurity beneath them. "So you wanted a Christmas without those feelings," I said, beginning to understand. She nodded, tears forming. "It was easier to blame you than admit I was ashamed of myself." "I'm sorry, Alexandra. What I did was really messed up." Her apology felt genuine in a way previous ones hadn't. There was no minimizing, no, but you also qualifier, just a straightforward acknowledgement of harm done. "I appreciate that," I said. "I'm sorry too if I made you feel judged. That was never my intention." "I know," she sighed. "Derek and I are looking at an apartment next week. It's small and in a not great area, but it's what we can afford right now." "That's good," I said. "A fresh start might be what you both need." "Yeah," she agreed. "And I'm looking into finishing my degree. Online classes that I can do while working full-time." "Really?" This was unexpected. Amy had dropped out of college after 2 years, always claiming it wasn't for her. She nodded. "I need to start taking responsibility for my life. Watching you stand up for yourself, it made me realize I need to grow up too." As we parted, she hugged me tentatively. "I miss you," she whispered. "The family isn't the same without you." "I miss you too," I admitted. "But I needed this boundary." "I know," she said. "I get it now." Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. The rift in my family wasn't fully healed, nor should it be too quickly. Real change required time and consistent effort from all of us. But for the first time, I felt hopeful that we were moving in the right direction. 2 months after changing my locks, I agreed to a family meeting at a neutral location, a private room at a local restaurant. My therapist had helped me prepare, working through my anxieties, and helping me identify clear boundaries for moving forward. We gathered around a large table, the tension palpable but different from the angry confrontations of before. My parents looked nervous, Amy and Derek subdued, and I felt strangely calm. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "I think we need to talk about how we move forward as a family." My father nodded. "We want to repair things, Alexandra. Just tell us how." "First, I need everyone to understand that what happened wasn't just about the Christmas trip. It was about years of patterns that need to change if we're going to have healthy relationships." I outlined the specific patterns, the expectation that I would always accommodate others' needs while my own were secondary, the lack of reciprocity in support and consideration. The different standards applied to Amy and me. "I'm not interested in blame," I clarified. "I participated in these dynamics too. But I am interested in change." To my surprise, no one became defensive. Instead, they listened attentively, occasionally nodding in recognition. "I've found us a family counselor," my mother said when I finished. "If you're willing, we'd like to try some sessions together." The fact that she had taken this initiative without prompting signaled a significant shift. Previously, addressing family issues had always fallen to me. "I'd like that," I agreed. Over the next several months, we attended bi-weekly sessions with Dr. Mercer, a family therapist with a direct, no-nonsense approach. She helped us identify unhealthy patterns and establish new ways of interacting. "Alexandra has been the family shock absorber," she observed in one session. Everyone's problems get dumped on her with the expectation she'll handle them. That's not sustainable or fair. My father looked genuinely surprised. I never thought of it that way. Most families have roles people fall into unconsciously, Dr. Mercer explained. The question is whether those roles are serving everyone well. Clearly, this one wasn't serving Alexandra. The therapy wasn't always comfortable. There were tears, defensive moments, and painful recognitions. But gradually, genuinely, things began to change. My parents started treating Amy and me more equally, holding her accountable in ways they hadn't before. When she and Derek finally found an apartment, my parents offered a one-time contribution to the security deposit, but made it clear ongoing support wouldn't be forthcoming. You need to stand on your own feet, my father told them. Words I'd never expected to hear from him. Amy, to her credit, rose to the challenge. She enrolled in online classes to finish her business degree and found a job as an administrative assistant that aligned with her eventual career goals. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was meaningful progress. Derek struggled more with the new family dynamic. Used to charm and deflection, he found himself expected to contribute substantively to conversations and plans. Eventually, he too began making efforts, finding more stable employment and taking responsibility for their household finances. Our family communication became more direct and honest. Instead of hinting at needs or expecting others to mind read, we practiced stating requests clearly and accepting no as a valid answer. I'd like to host Easter this year, I said during a family call in March. That sounds nice, my mother replied, then added something she never would have before. What can we do to help make that happen? This simple acknowledgement that hosting involved work that should be shared marked a small, but significant evolution in our relationship. For my part, I worked on expressing my needs more clearly and setting boundaries before resentment built up. I practiced saying no without extensive justification, a skill that felt uncomfortable at first, but gradually became natural. Can you help me move some furniture this weekend? Amy asked during a casual lunch. No, I have plans already, I replied, resisting the urge to elaborate or apologize. Okay, no problem, she responded easily, another sign of our improving dynamic. The changes extended beyond my family relationships. I found myself setting clearer boundaries at work, with friends, and in dating. I became more comfortable expressing my preferences and needs, no longer defaulting to accommodating others at my own expense. When Easter arrived, our gathering felt different from previous holidays. Everyone contributed to preparations. Conversation flowed naturally without underlying tensions, and for the first time in years, I enjoyed a family celebration without exhaustion afterward. Sitting in my backyard after dinner, watching my father and Derek discussing baseball while my mother and Amy cleared dishes they had insisted I leave for them, I felt a profound sense of peace. Amy joined me, handing me a glass of wine. This is nice, she said, gesturing to the scene around us. It is, I agreed. Different, but nice. I've been thinking about what happened at Christmas, she said quietly. At the time, I was so angry at you for changing the locks. I thought you were being cruel. And now? I asked. Now I think it was the best thing you could have done, she admitted. For all of us. We needed that wake-up call. Her words validated what I had come to believe myself, that sometimes the kindest action isn't the gentlest one. Sometimes real care requires disruption of harmful patterns, even when that disruption causes temporary pain. I'm proud of you, Amy, I said sincerely. You've really stepped up. She smiled. I'm proud of you too. Standing up for yourself the way you did took courage. As summer approached, we planned a new family trip. This time with everyone involved in the decision-making from the beginning. We chose a beach house on the Oregon coast, each person contributing what they could financially and to the planning process. The trip wasn't perfect. Old habits occasionally resurfaced, requiring gentle corrections and reminders. But it was markedly different from previous gatherings, characterized by mutual respect rather than unspoken resentments. One evening, walking along the beach with my mother. I reflected on how far we'd come. I never thought changing the locks on my house would lead to all this, I said. She laughed softly. Sometimes love looks like firm boundaries. I wish I had learned that earlier in life. It's never too late to learn, I replied, squeezing her hand. The journey hasn't been easy, and we're still learning. There are difficult days when old patterns threaten to reassert themselves. But we've created a new foundation based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and unspoken expectations. What I've learned through all of this is that family relationships, like all relationships, require honesty, boundaries, and reciprocity to be healthy. Blood ties don't exempt us from treating each other with respect. In fact, those we love most deserve our truest selves, not the conflict-avoidant versions we often present in the name of keeping peace. Sometimes the bravest, most loving thing we can do is disrupt patterns that harm everyone involved. It's not easy, and it's certainly not comfortable, but the growth on the other side is worth the temporary pain. So if you're struggling with family dynamics that leave you feeling unseen or taken for granted, know that change is possible. It might require a dramatic moment like changing your locks, or it might come through smaller, consistent boundary setting. Either way, you deserve relationships that honor your worth. What boundaries have you needed to set with loved ones? Have you ever had to take drastic measures to be heard? Share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most difficult choices lead to the most beautiful transformations.